We must continue to support Ukraine, as Putin's victory will be a tragedy. NATO Secretary General. Ukrainska Pravda. Jens Stoltenberg, NATO Secretary General, stressed that allies should continue to support Ukraine in the war unleashed by the Russian Federation. Source: Stoltenberg in an interview with ARD, quoted by DW, as reported by European Pravda details. Stoltenberg stressed that further support for Ukraine is in the interests of NATO itself. Below are your comments. If the U.S. is not going to support Ukraine with everything it needs to win, we should walk away from NATO, and write off Europe. If the nations of Europe will not spend even the minimum on defense required by NATO, it is time to leave the freeloaders to their fate. Let Germany and France deal with NATO. Tragedy depends on the point of view. NATO hasn't done any good to the world. Never forget that the EU hasn't delivered even half of the ammunition, military equipment and money it's pledged, leaving the Americans' taxpayers paying the bill. The U.S. is the only nation in the world refusing to defend its own border while sending troops, aircraft carriers, weapons, billions of dollars to defend borders of other nations. We won't be happy until we make it a NATO country and set nukes on its border. For how long? Waste of money, as they will never win. This is beyond silly. Time, cut losses and move on. Let the M fix their problems. Next news. Malay plans labor, tax reform in shock package, La Nación says. Bloomberg. President-elect Javier Milei aims to present reforms to Argentina's tax and labor laws, political processes and potential privatizations in an economic shock package immediately after taking office. CE on deck. La Nación newspaper reported Sunday. Most read from Bloomberg. Wall Street's furious bull run gets reality check. Markets wrap how suspects laundered billions in Singapore for years. Bitcoin surges past $42,000 as crypto rally gathers steam. Israel's wider war has U.S. cautioning of. Below are your comments. Drastic times call for drastic measures. When it is no longer possible to repair an old dilapidated house, it is better to demolish it and build anew. I hope Milei will succeed. It is a pity to see people suffer while living in a country with so many resources. Great countries need great competent leaders. Too many countries are being bleeped by politicians eager to retain power. Great. A shock package just in time for Christmas. Argentina already has a 40% poverty rate. Just what the poor working need to make their lives worse. Talk is cheap. Let's see what he actually accomplishes. Definitely a brandy buck hobbit. Next news. Ukraine develops new modification of Neptune missile system. Ukrainska Pravda. Ukraine is developing a new missile modification for the domestically produced Neptune missile system. Source: Ivan Havrilyuk, Ukraine's deputy defense minister, in an interview with Army-Inform news outlet. Militarny, a Ukrainian online military media outlet, details. The deputy minister explained that efforts were underway to develop what he called a longer-range NATO tune. Below are your comments. New nickname for the Neptune. Putin's suppository. Russia, if you are listening, get the heck out of Ukraine or lose 1 million more Russians. Ever heard of WMD? Well, nukes are not the only one and your troops are not prepared. They should deliver a half-dozen of them to Moscow, for the Kremlin's approval. Go Ukraine. Keep kicking those occupiers out of your country. The Neptune missile is nothing more than a copy of a first-generation Harpoon missile. Remember, the war in Ukraine will be over and they will have lost by the end of January. The Russians only need another week of frozen ground, which they've already had 1 week of cold temper. Assures. Armor requires T. Next news. Pope Francis says climate has run amok, pushes for policy change. The Hill. Pope Francis said the climate has run amok and pushed for policy change to combat global warming at the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference. COP28. Saturday. The drive to produce and possess has become an obsession, resulting in an inordinate greed that has made the environment the object of unbridled exploitation, the Pope said. Below are your comments. A radical takeover of a major religion is serious business. Then stuffing the organization within the church with liberals conducting the political process of electing a new pope can doom the entire religion. This is a fine example of what communism socialism-oriented leaders can do, like mold SPR. I can't help wonder what schools he attended to develop such a high degree of understanding of our ecology and atmosphere. He makes me think of Arthur C. Clarke's second Rama book, where the Catholics were heavily involved in the story. He already knew we were going to crash the environment back then. Try eliminating myths, lies and populist control for money. Return stolen Vatjan artifacts, a much better agenda. Next news. Infamous blogger Miroslav Oleshko allegedly flees Ukraine with a fake border permit purchased for $1,500. The new voice of Ukraine. Ukrainian blogger Miroslav Oleshko, considered controversial for urging Ukrainian men to flee the country, has himself left Ukraine on allegedly false papers, Ukrainian news network TSN reported, citing anonymous sources in law enforcement, on deck. Below are your comments. I disagree with him trying to convince others to join him, but I do agree with his decision not to fly GHT and leave the country. Every man should have the right to choose if they want to go to war or not. People are not government property or slaves based upon where they happen to be born and should. It's not about being tough, it's about what each individual believes his life is worth. Personally, my life is worth more than any government thinks it is. Smart guy. Why die in a war so that military contractors and politicians can get rich? We must stop funding this war. Zelensky can pick up arms himself to continue this fight. I sincerely doubt he will. Who wants to die for the rich? Next news. Bulgarian president overrides parliament, blocks transfer of APCs for Ukraine's war effort. The new voice of Ukraine. Bulgarian President Rumen Radev has vetoed a bill passed by the legislature that would have allowed Ukraine to receive armored vehicles free of charge, news outlet Nova Bulgaria reported on deck. Below are your comments. Voted in a real smart Bulgarian dude. Not. Ukraine needs everyone and everything to defend Europe and the free world from a Russian child bomber. Terrorists, rapists, thieves, child bleepers, and human animals should never be allowed to win. Whose side is he on? Just SMH. Every week another country cutting support. Russia is waiting and laughing. Russia has helped goons get power all around the world, and they certainly feed Russia intel and block KS anti-Russian policies. It's fairly obvious when every decision they make benefits Russia. Another Russian puppet leading a NATO country. Time to withhold all economic and other forms of aid for Bulgaria. Next news. Russians launch 20 Shahed drones and 8 missiles on Ukraine. Air defense down 14 drones. Ukrainska Pravda. Russia attacked Ukraine using 20 Shahed attack drones and 8 S-300 missiles on the night of 29 to 30 November, and Ukraine's air defense forces destroyed 14 drones. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Quote, "The occupiers attacked our country again at night, using 8 S-300 anti-aircraft guided missiles, a ND-20 Shahed-136 131st drones." Below are your comments. Who needs satellite data links for control flight, when you can control fly by cell phone? You can jam satellite uplinks but not cell phone. If it wasn't for Iran selling oil to China then giving the money to Russia, they'd be broke by now. Thanks Brandon for allowing that to occur. Not. Respect the territorial integrity of Russia and international law. In 2014, Ukraine and NATO illegally invaded the territories of southeastern Russia, where 20 million Russian citizens live without declaring war on Russia. Next news. War with Hamas is taking a toll on Israel's entrepreneur economy. Bloomberg. 2 months since Hamas attacked, Israel's abrupt shift to a war economy has left entrepreneurs sue. Ch as Shlomi Tuskia struggling to stay afloat. Most read from Bloomberg. Wall Street's furious bull run gets reality check. Markets wrap how suspects laundered billions in Singapore for years. Bitcoin surges past $42,000 as cry. PTO rally gathers steam. Israel's wider war has U.S. cautioning of strategic defeat. Here's how to invest in gold as it hits an all-time high. There's effectively no bussin'. Below are your comments. Israel is resilient and will weather this war and defeat Iran's proxies. We have no other choice. U.S. taxpayers will pay for all Israeli war efforts and war crimes. As always, Benny wanted this war at any cost, so go talk with him. Not a U.S. problem. On the backs of the American taxpayer. Well, he's not the only one. At least he can find some comfort in that. Next news. Klitschko jabs Zelensky, claims Ukraine is becoming authoritarian. Fox News. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko claimed that Ukraine was leaderless during the early months of the war. WITH Russia, in an interview published Friday. Below are your comments. Is Ukraine no longer the crown of freedom and democracy? How is it possible that Ukraine is no longer a democratic state? How could this, friends, happen? Just yesterday, Ukraine surpassed the United States of America in freedom and democracy. Was Zelensky the new Winston Churchill? How did it happen that the most democratic state in the world, like Ukraine, was still free and democratic yesterday, and today it is author? Best thing for Ukraine is for Zelensky to go. He will not negotiate an end to the war unless the US and NATO stop sending arms. The Zelensky regime is imploding, it can't last much longer. Next news. Zaluzhny complained to Pentagon chief about President's office and asked for 17 million shells, UK. Ukrainska Pravda sources. Ukrainska Pravda. Lloyd Austin, head of the Pentagon, was informed during his visit that Ukraine requires 17 million shells and that $350 minus $400 billion worth of force and resources will be essential to liberate the Sioux. NTRY. Below are your comments. That is $400 billion, not including the roughly $5 billion per month to keep the Kiev government afloat. Add a few years of that to go, as well as the $300 billion that the US, UK, EU already provided them, and this is a $1 trillion proxy war, not counting the economic damages incurred as we 17 million artillery shells and $350 to $400 billion more. Okay, anything else? 450 minus 500 billion United States dollars. That's quite a sum. Next news. Anger and despair as Palestinians queue for supplies during truce. BBC. Palestinians are filled with anger and despair as they seek basic supplies during the truce in Gaza. Below are your comments. I can't describe the destruction. Entire families have been erased from civil records. They were bleep under their houses. Gaza has been completely destroyed. Have mercy on us. Please. On October 7, when Hamas invaded Israel, entire families were wiped out and were bleep in their houses. Wonder if these people are smart enough to connect the dots on how their situation got this way. Not angry and despaired enough to kick out Hamas and make peace with Israel. Next news. Israel lets AI help it figure out where to bomb in war-torn Gaza, and the number of targets has skyrocketed. Business Insider. The Israeli military has relied on an AI system to produce Hamas-affiliated targets that it can bomb in Gaza. Below are your comments. They wrote a program that says if it moves KLL it. Just level it and there will be a 100% targeting success rate. Regardless of AI, if they are taking out Hamas, I am all for it. Once Gaza is bombed back to the Stone Age, use Hamas and its supporters for dust control to save on the water resources. Return the hostages, surrender terrorists responsible for 10/7. End the violence now. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.